Welcome to the Women Inspired Podcast, where together we explore ways to live our most joyful, aligned, vibrant lives. On this podcast, we draw inspiration from the lessons embedded in other women's stories, and we use them to catalyze our own growth and success. And we explore concepts and techniques from the fields of psychology and design thinking that can help us thrive and make the most of the one and only life we're ever going to have. My name is April Seifert. I'm a psychologist, an entrepreneur, and a self-proclaimed life experience junkie, and I'm your host and friend along this journey. This podcast is supported by Modern Well, a woman-centered co-opportunity workspace in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Friend, it is time to start living vibrantly, by design, and with intention. Here we go. Hello, friends, and welcome back to the Women Inspired Podcast. My name is April Seifert, and I'm your host. And this episode is going to be different than any of the other episodes that I've ever released. So number one, it is not happening on a Wednesday, which means it's not an interview. I'm releasing on a Monday, but unlike my other Monday episodes, this is also not an episode where I'm going to be teaching on a concept. Rather, this episode is one where I want to talk directly to you guys about a new direction I'm going to be going and what that's going to mean for the podcast and the work I'm doing and what you're going to get from me. And I'm really excited about it, and also sort of sad, and also thrilled, and also scared, and all the things that come with growing in an area that is very new and stepping into something that is outside of your comfort zone. So, as listeners who have listened to me for a while, some of you, and even if you're new, I want you to know first and foremost that if you listen to this podcast, I absolutely consider you a friend. Dare I say it, a family member. This podcast is something that I have taken so seriously in the context of feeling like I'm really developing a relationship with all of you. And the thing about it is that happened so natively and so organically. So as I started this podcast, people started reaching out to me, and they started asking questions, and they started asking for help, and they started asking me for advice on things, or to speak at their groups, or to hop on a call and talk through a problem. And that was incredible, because I felt like the work that I was doing to find these inspiring stories and to pull out lessons from them and put them out there in this way, I felt like it was actually helping people. And there is nothing more incredible than feeling like you are using any talent that you have, whatever that might be, you're using that talent to help other people. It's incredible. And throughout this time, there have been some slight pivots in the podcast, but behind the scenes, what has happened is I've really crystallized what it is that I believe I was put here to do. The idea of Life Design Lab came out of people asking me for help and asking me how they could set up their day-to-day experience to be more vibrant and be more aligned. And because of that, I created Life Design Lab. And the people that went through it, the change that happened, and the meaningful growth, it brings me to my knees to think about the shift that happened with these people, all because I listened to the questions that people had when they reached out to me, and I created something that was using a skill that I had. Design thinking is a skill that I've cultivated in my day job, using a skill that I have to help people with that thing they were asking me for. And that's what's happening again, but on a much bigger scale. And that's what I want to talk about today. So for today's episode, because I truly feel like you all are, I'm literally going to cry on this episode. Because I feel like you guys are friends and family of mine, I want to talk about the direction that I'm going to be going in all of its excitement and terror and uncertainty, there are certain things that are very motivating. And those things are to help you all in a much bigger way with the things that you are writing to me and emailing me and DMing me about to ask for. So in this episode, which is apparently going to be tearful, who knew? I'm going to talk to you guys about what's going to be happening with the podcast. I'll talk to you about why that is happening and what to expect going forward. And hopefully, we can all go on this ride together and all ride this little pivot together. Because the one thing that won't change is I will still be here every single week. And I will still be here doing my best to bring you content and information and lessons and techniques and tools that you can use to improve your life. Okay, so what is happening? As you all may know, recently I announced my partnership with a colleague of mine from graduate school named Ashley Smith. She and I recently announced the launch of Peak Mind, the Center for Psychological Strength. And if you want to know more about that and you want to hear that conversation, we actually made that announcement in episode 111. So if you want more info, that is the episode for you to learn about Peak Mind. So Ashley and I developed Peak Mind basically in response to the questions that I get and clients that she takes as a clinical psychologist. She and I got together and, what we noticed is that there isn't, when we think about physical wellness and physical well-being, we all know what the preventive things we're supposed to do are, right? Like work out, eat well, drink water, sleep well, take care of yourself. And we started talking about it and we said, there are gym memberships for people physically to keep them physically healthy. There's no gym memberships for your mind. Like, where are those? Because the mindset that we have and the way that our minds automatically work, it can happen by default, and our minds can, frankly, go down sort of a bad path. Or we can do things. We know from research that we can do things to intentionally change the habits that our mind has and the way that they function. Ashley does this every single day in her clinical practice. And I studied these techniques when I was in graduate school. And so we know all of this. Yet the only way to access them is to go to therapy, which has an amazing place. Don't get me wrong. I've gone to therapy twice in my life, and it was incredibly impactful. But for people who therapy isn't quite right for them, for whatever reason, there's no other option. Where's the gym membership for your mind? Well, we couldn't find it, so we created it, and that's what Peak Mind, the Center for Psychological Strength, is. Now, that was born out of, as I mentioned, questions that I received from so many of you about how do I build confidence? How do I move past fear? I feel like the way that my mind is working is limiting me, and I feel like there are things that I can't do, but there's this little voice that's telling me maybe I can. How do I move forward in spite of the fact that that voice is so tiny who's telling me I might be able to do it? These are all questions that relate to psychological strength. And because of that, in episode 111, I was so excited to announce to all of you this partnership. And when I started to think about it, really what I do with this podcast is so centered on psychological strength and life design. All of the lessons that I'm pulling out of these women's stories are centered so much around psychological strength and life design. Because at their fundamental core, those concepts are the ones that allow you, they're like the foundation for you building a vibrant, incredible life, psychological strength and intentional life design. And the more I thought about that, the more I thought, this is what I'm doing anyway with the podcast. Why don't I just totally do it with the podcast? So, officially, what is happening with the podcast as of August 1st? The Women Inspired podcast will shift, and it will become the Building Psychological Strength podcast. You'll see slightly different cover art. You'll see a different name. What won't change is that I will always be here. I'll be here every single week, teaching you guys about the same types of concepts that I've taught about before. But by focusing on this more specific goal, I truly believe we can be more impactful about making shifts because I can put all of my energy and all of my weight behind helping you guys build this foundation that research tells us we know is so critical for people. Mindset is such a big deal. And so the shift is happening because I was being asked questions related to psychological strength and life design all the time. And I know how important those concepts are. They're important because they create meaningful shifts in people's lives. I've seen it firsthand within the Life Design Lab. And I want to put all of my energy behind helping people in that capacity. I literally cannot even imagine how incredible the world would be if everyone were psychologically strong, if everyone truly harnessed the power of their own minds and pushed it in a direction where it became their biggest asset instead of a liability. That is powerful. And that is a vision and that is a mission that I can get behind. And I want to put my work and my effort there. I have loved every conversation that I've had throughout, the 2.5 years that I've built this podcast so far. I have loved getting to know all of you who have reached out either in email, through my website, or on social media. I've absolutely adored it, and that won't change. But like I said, what will change is the name, the cover art, and we'll be talking about slightly more specific concepts. So you're going to hear from some guys sometimes. I've never interviewed a man on the podcast before, but you're going to hear from some because what I'm going to do is pull in people who are truly experts in the area of helping people build psychological strength. So it could be any of the topics that are related to that. I'll be bringing you people who can help you make meaningful shifts in that way, who can bring practical tips and techniques to this podcast so that you can deploy them in your own life. My biggest goal is for you to listen to this podcast and walk away psychologically stronger every single week with tactical things that you can do in your own life to continue on that journey. So here's what to expect. As of August 1st, you'll see some changes on your phone. This will happen automatically. I'll be pushing out the new branding of the podcast, the new name. In terms of what you need to do, not a thing. I truly hope that you are as excited about this focus as I am, because really that's all it is. It's me focusing in on the topics that I was being asked about most often. I'm zeroing in on the things that will most impact people's day-to-day lives. So you don't need to do anything. Your phone will automatically update. If you are subscribed, which I hope you are, if you're subscribed, you will automatically get updates from me. They'll automatically come to your phone just like they did before. And you'll hear from people who are truly experts in psychology and life design. And I'm requiring all of them to bring their expertise, bring their ideas, bring their tools and techniques, and share them here. So, July will finish out this podcast as you know it now as Women Inspired. And August will bring on a new dawn of me focusing in on the things that I truly believe I can impact in people's lives. I want to thank each and every one of you who has been on this journey with me. You know, I've made a few pivots prior to now. This one's a larger pivot. It's a bit of a turn, but I think it's the right one. I really do. And I truly hope that each and every one of you will continue along with me on this journey. Because as I mentioned, I consider all of you friends and family now. And I want you to come along with me on this journey because I truly believe that every single person out there can benefit from building psychological strength and taking an intentional approach to designing their own life. I know this is true. So, thank you so much for being a listener. I'm so excited and so scared and so sad and so all the things about this new shift. But I can't wait. And I know it's going to be amazing, big things to come, because that's what always happens when you step out of your comfort zone. So thank you guys so much. And we'll just ride this one out together. All right. Bye, guys. Before we close out today, I want to say thank you to my producer, Cameron Hill, and to my incredible sponsor, Modern Well. If you want to learn more about how you can reach your goals in a one-of-a-kind work-life community, visit www.modernwell.co. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with someone else who might benefit from this inspiring message. And if you have a moment, click the link in the episode description to leave me a rating and a review on iTunes. It would mean so much to me. Finally, I want to remind you that it is absolutely possible to live a happy, fulfilling life, even in spite of all of the chaos and demands we all experience. Sign up at aprilseifert.com to gain access to tools that will help you do just that. I have carefully created and curated a set of tools that combine the powerful fields of psychology and design thinking to help you intentionally create a fulfilling, happy life you love. Thank you so much for joining me this week, and until next week, stay inspired.